Transformers: Fall of Cybertron is a direct sequel to Transformers: War for Cybertron, released in 2010 by High Moon Studios. High Moon is back at the helm for this new release, and they've brought with them experiences of their successes and failures from both War for Cybertron and the movie tie-in game Dark of the Moon. This game bridges a very narrow gap between the end of the war and the Autobots' escape on the Ark. You're not going to see any major revelations come about, but even so, there are some very epic set pieces, and the story is told in an urgent manner that makes sure you keep moving from one point to the next. Most of the Transformers from the previous game are demoted to extra, allowing more of the other characters to get some time in the spotlight. Fan favorites like Optimus and Megatron are still around, but now you can play as the Combaticons, even Bruticus, Cliffjumper, my favorite smooth cat Jazz,
Can't believe you outranked me.
complete with breakdancing transformation. I could watch him do that all day. And the mighty Grimlock. It's no surprise to know that the Dinobots are making an appearance in this version, especially since Grimlock has been known to be a playable character for some time. What might not be as highly known is that this almost didn't happen. Hasbro had wanted to retire the Dinobots, stating they were no longer relevant to the current Transformers mythos. Game director Matt Teeger had the difficult task of getting them to change their minds. He gave Grimlock his intelligence back, changed up some of the origin story, and made the Dinobots a failed experiment by Shockwave, who tried to turn some Autobots into his own personal pets.
Did he say Shockwave?
Did he say pets?
The full story is linked below. This game is not going to win any awards for graphics. Truth is, most of the textures are low resolution and fine details get lost in a haze of fuzzy jaggies. It really can take you out of the immersion when the texture that's fuzzy is something that's very big and meant to draw attention, such as a massive Decepticon logo. While the fine texture details might be a mess, the game does deliver on robot design and overall level feeling. Some levels have been opened up considerably, giving some characters the ability to really move around in combat. This has the added effect of allowing transformations mid-combat to be truly helpful. Some of the levels have a sense of scale so large, it's hard to remember these characters you're playing are actually several times larger than a human being. In this regard, the Transformers homeworld of Cybertron feels fully realized. Thankfully, one of the design changes here is that Cybertron no longer feels like a world of gunmetal gray, as the color palette has been opened up considerably, making the world feel more natural, even if it is still a floating orb of titanium. If you've played War for Cybertron, then you know exactly how this game plays. The basics have been left alone, but there have been some tweaks and updates to the system to enhance the gameplay. If you've never played previous Transformer games, then you're in for a quick-paced third-person shooter. The game does not do much for the third-person shooter genre, providing no real innovation, but it's a game that realizes that if the systems aren't broken, then you don't necessarily have to fix them. Rather, the game provides you with a tight and responsive romp through the Transformers world. In War for Cybertron, characters had two special abilities at their disposal. Fall of Cybertron takes this down to one special ability per bot, but adds in the ability for every Transformer to dash and sprint at need, adding ways to close small gaps and move fast for all bots, not just the scouts. Most of the old special abilities have been put back in as disposable items that can be used by anyone. The guns have been changed around in this installment, though most of them made it in. Weapons can now be swapped from one hand to the other by simple button press, allowing you to shoot around corners at any angle. You can find weapons on the field, in Energon lockers throughout the game, or just purchase them from the Teletran 1 shop. Truth is, you can usually just avoid the shop as most guns will be available somewhere on the field or in a far cheaper Energon locker. The shop does allow you to upgrade and modify the base starting weapons, eventually giving them some really powerful final options. While these options are cool, including a high-powered melee swing, a random pistol shot that deals massive AoE damage, and the chance to set the enemy on fire, they are very expensive, and you might not finish one until later in the game. If you do want to upgrade your guns, your first purchase should be the perk that reduces the cost by 25%. For single player, gone is the character selection screen of the previous game. Instead of choosing from 3 characters to play your level, the other 2 becoming computer-controlled companions, you only get one character for that level. While it might seem like it's preventing you from choosing who you want to play as and it would hinder the game, the truth is, in War for Cybertron, most of the characters really were the same, and the special abilities were not a huge game changer for the overall feel of the level. This change has allowed High Moon to design the levels with each Transformer's special skill set in mind. Optimus Prime gets the most combat-oriented missions, with the ability to summon mortar strikes from the mighty Metroplex. Cliffjumper has stealth and the ability to take out enemies instantly. Jazz has a grappling hook, allowing him to navigate more vertical levels, a la Bionic Commando. And Grimlock, smash. Hard. Co-op has been removed from this installment due to the effort taken to make each character's level feel unique. As I love co-op style games, this change did come as a blow. However, the level designs as they exist would have been rather difficult for more than one person to progress through at the same time. While co-op may be gone, its spirit does live on in Escalation Mode, Transformers' version of Horde Mode. Some of the other more interesting multiplayer modes have been removed, including Standard Deathmatch Mode. However, most of the standard options have returned. Team Deathmatch is the standard fare. Conquest has you battling for control nodes like battlefield flags. A standard Capture the Flag mode has been added, including a much-needed caveat that you will drop the flag if you go into vehicle mode, and a new mode called Headhunter. As of this review, not much is known about Headhunter, as no games were being played on that mode. It seems to be a mode where you kill opponents for sparks, and then return those sparks to your base in order to get points. I played the PC port of this game mainly because I don't have a video capture card, else I probably would have gotten the PS3 version. But this did allow me to see if they gave PC gamers all the options they would want. This is especially important now as the PC port almost didn't happen. Eventually the PC version was added to Steam and uses the Steam platform's matchmaking and friends list to make it easier to find friends and keep track of achievements. Most of the standard options are there that you come to expect with PC games, including support for most resolutions. However, the first complaint is that graphical textures in the game are pretty bad. While most console ports to PC are expected to have lower resolution graphics, now that Sleeping Dogs has come out with its PC-only high-res texture pack download, most PC ports just aren't going to be looked at the same way. Once a company's done it right, it's hard to look at the status quo and say, well, this is normal, I just have to put up with it. Hopefully Square Enix's love to the PC gamer will spread, and high-res packs will become the norm. Where the game fails horribly is controls. Don't get me wrong, the default controls are quite smooth and responsive, but the problem is you can't change these controls in any meaningful way. There are several preset control schemes, but you are not allowed to rebind the keys. This can make PC users with custom equipment such as multi-button mice feel put off. I myself have two side mouse buttons I would have loved to use for, say, my melee attacks instead of the middle mouse button. The melee key can be set to the keyboard, but I was never happy with the key placement and ended up leaving it on the mouse. Other control issues exist in the form of navigating menus or the Teletran 1 store. Most of the graphical elements in the game were not designed with the mouse input in mind, so you end up having to cycle through items in a very awkward and non-intuitive manner. Lastly, because most of your movement is done on the mouse, driving can feel a little awkward. To be honest, I prefer using my WSAD keys while driving. It's something I picked up in Battlefield, and it took a while to get used to using the mouse to steer around at high speeds. Once you get used to it, it's not that bad, but I would have liked the option to have changed it. In terms of multiplayer, the game falls flat once again. The matchmaking and multiplayer options were all left as they were in the console version, making them a pain to navigate and creating an inexplicable issue where you can't hit escape to cancel out of any operation once the game starts matchmaking or trying to migrate hosts. Yes, migrate hosts, you heard me correctly. The PC version also uses the console's player-hosted sessions, foregoing the standard of dedicated servers. This isn't a huge issue most of the time. The game actually performs fairly well considering this. However, some games can feel very laggy and janky even if your connection is strong. If the host leaves, be prepared to wait a long time as the system attempts to migrate the host, fails to do so, and leaves you in a near empty lobby waiting for more players. This is especially sad as said issue was stated to have been a concern in the previous game and was supposed to have been fixed. For me, these issues have popped up very little, but are still there, and any purchaser for the PC should be aware that they exist. Last on the list of port failings is the lack of voice chat. This is nigh inexcusable, especially considering the amazing work Steam has put into voice chat in their infrastructure and games. Voice chat has been fully left out, left only in the console versions. While I hate console ports that leave the microphone always on, it's much preferable to having no voice chat at all. While you can live without it, in competitive modes at least, it's nearly a requirement for the co-op horde mode known as Escalation. Well, considering the large amount of issues with the PC port, they mostly exist on the multiplayer side. Even then, though, the game is fun. There's something about using strategic use of skills and transformations to take out your opponent. The single player has a great pacing and a story that was a joy to complete, really. Considering the variety of things that you can do this time around, I find myself wanting to go back just to experience it again. If you love Transformers, you should love the game. Doubly so if you love the previous game. If you don't care for Transformers, the game might not convert you, but it still feels tight and responsive enough that you might just enjoy it anyway.